Good evening. Today is Thursday, another opportunity for me to share the gospel according to the Pussy Pastor. When I first embarked on my ministry journey about 20 plus years ago or so, there were many scriptural interpretations that had me perplexed. What was written in the text didn't match the explanation or interpretation in which I received. The God of the text, if you will, and the God of the church were in opposition. The God of the church said sex is of the flesh, and those who indulge in the flesh have a special place in hell. Not a regular place, but a special place. This is VIP membership only. We done set aside a special place for you. And when an unmarried woman got pregnant, grown or not, there was a shame placed on her worthy of expulsion. This is, of course, unless she endured the punishment with a submissive or humble spirit. And that punishment was emotionally taxing. She needed to crucify her flesh and put herself under subjection, and others often assisted. Now, you see, there is this woman in the Bible who didn't have the same fate of weeping and gnashing of teeth. This woman lived free and greatly pleasured in the sense of satisfaction and desire. Do you know who this woman is? Rahab. Who? Rahab? Yes. Joshua chapter 2, beginning at verse 1 says, Joshua, the son of Nun, sent from Shittim 2 men spies, secretly saying, go survey the land, including Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a woman, a sex-selling woman. Her name was Rahab, and they lay down there. Now then, since I have dealt kindly with you, this is Rahab speaking, the text says, swear to me by the Lord that you will in turn deal kindly with my family. Give me a sign of good faith that you will spare my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death. The men said to her, our life for yours. If you do not tell this business of ours, then we will deal kindly and faithfully with you when the Lord gives us the land. Now, I've only heard this text preached from the perspective that Rahab was a sex slave, or in our updated version of understanding, a woman trafficked. And even that interpretation is a big leap from the traditional interpretation, which was that she was a sinner. A no good, nasty, filthy, dirty, stinking whore. That's what they say. She's a whore. And if she was such a disgrace, a stench in the nostrils of God, why wasn't she the first to go? Why was she and her tribe the only to survive? Can someone give me a reason besides God's grace and unmerited favor? Let me tell you who I believe Rahab to be. Rahab was free. Rahab was physically secure and protected. She was fiscally responsible. She had to be fine, and she could folk, which made her a healer. Because if you can't folk, F-O-K-E, but y'all know what I'm saying. You don't have to say amen. And let me just take a moment to pause, because if you would give yourself over to enjoying the pleasures of life, you might not be so mean. Now, listen, this isn't judgments, because I know the burdens that we carry as women and as a people. But when are you going to put the burdens down? If you can indulge in pleasure guilt-free, you wouldn't have to fake happiness like you fake orgasms, because a good orgasm is medicine, and you need it because you are ill, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I'm not making light of illness. Rahab lived a life many women would have chosen if they could, because most women were property, whether it was of their husband, their father, or sex slave owner. This woman was a boss. She negotiated with men because negotiations don't happen between employees. They happen between business owners. And this is no shade against employees. Because when you have a dilemma, you want to speak to the HNIC. Let me speak to your manager. And then here comes Rahab. I am in charge of the girls. I remember when I was an executive director and I think a neighbor had a tiff with either an employee or a volunteer. And so this neighbor said, I need to speak to the person in charge. So one of the employees, of course, came and got me, and I came out. And the woman said, I need to speak to your boss. And I was like, ma'am, it's just me here. I am the boss. Technically, it was the board, but you get the point. I just remember the first time being able to say, there is no one above me. We have assumed that Rahab was degrading herself and lacked self-esteem because of the Madonna whore dichotomy. Now, I talked a little bit about this complex in my first video, which I will link in the end of this video. In our society, we only respect the virtuous woman. The Madonna is modest, which equals good wife material. She is to be honored and worthy of protection and support. The whore, on the other hand, is desired but disrespected. She's only good for one thing. That phrase that people often repeat, you can't turn a whore into a housewife, comes to mind. The whore gets what she deserves, and usually that's violation and dishonor. What we fail to see is both women are worthy. Rahab was both desired and respected, both loved and protected. She powerfully lived at the intersection. She was spiritual and sexual. And why can't we as individuals be both if we so desire? Why are women forced to choose? Rahab didn't suffer with this complex. She was brilliant, self-honoring, and skillful, which is another misconception because we also assume less intelligence or lack of skill when we talk about sex workers. Sex is a skill, and this woman was masterful because you ain't doing nothing well without practice. Rahab was a businesswoman, and business was good. Sex is also a dance, and everyone ain't got the rhythm or good flow. Rahab was anointed. Why else would these men, supposedly of faith, visit her first? These men didn't stop at the religious temple. They visited the temple of Rahab. Now, in undergrad, I would drive from Nashville, which is where I went to school, shout out to Tennessee State, back home, and traveling the roads, probably like 4.5 hours. Before you get on the road, child, you better plead the blood. You plead the blood over the car, over the animals, over other drivers. You pray that you don't get stopped and get a ticket. You pray for safe passage. And when you arrive to your destination safely, you better give thanks for traveling grace and mercy. And when these men arrived, they gave thanks and they worshiped in the temple. A sexually free woman is an anointed woman because her self-expression is transcending and transforming power. Humans have created a place called hell because we, dare I say, enjoy pain, and we love to put women in it for expressing their sexuality. Our sexual energy is a part of our spirit, where we must cultivate it and nurture it so that we can express it into the world. And when we don't let ourselves go, releasing ourselves from the taboo and entering the depths of our erotic nature, we are fighting ourselves and in turn one another. Because through our expression, we, like Rahab, can save ourselves and our people. Let us use our erotic power to transcend us from the hell of oppression into a life worth living. Rahab served a goddess of pleasure and abundance. I want to make this distinction. She served the goddess of pleasure and abundance versus Israel, who served a god of war and destruction. Rahab lived on what some scholars described the margins of Canaan. She lived along the city wall. And I'd like to argue that not everyone who resides on the margin is destitute. Some are intentional and desire not to live near the seat of power. Rahab didn't carry the burden of saving the world. She knew she couldn't save everyone and didn't put unnecessary pressure on herself to do so. Rahab was a protector or a mother. Rahab said, y'all came to kill, steal, and destroy. And I can't do much to change that. But as for me and mine, you better not touch, okay? How many of you all had a mama to defend you? That's goddess energy. Don't let nobody tell they mama, cause child, a good a good mama is coming for you, okay? And when mama ain't acting right, I'm calling her mama, which is grandmama. I remember one night I called my grandmama on my mama. My grandmother lived at least 30 minutes away. This was the evening on a school night. It was late. And my grandmama didn't drive. I just called and she heard my cry and she was like, I'm on my way. Now, I told you she didn't drive, but my uncle was at her house. So she was like, warm up the car because we on our way. Now, I don't know. My grandmother ended up not coming. She talked to my mother. I don't know what that conversation was, but it was resolved. My grandmother is now an ancestor, and I can still call on her. So don't make me call her ancestor. Rahab embodied the divine feminine. The divine feminine is, I would say, a relational intelligence. Rahab had healthy, nurturing, and influential relationships because you cannot operate on this planet alone. She had a powerful reputation. Rahab was happy and fulfilled because she enjoyed being herself, and being herself paid off tremendously. So, if you desire to be your free sexual and spiritual self, join me on the journey. Be like Rahab if you desire to comment. She dealt kindly with the Israelites and in good faith. Until next time, may your spirits be encouraged and your bodies pleasured. Good night.